immediately reconvene as the Mequon Municipal Water Utility Commission. And we'll call that meeting to order. We can let the roll reflect that everyone that was here before is still here, which brings us to approval of the minutes from October 8th.
Move approval.
Motion and a second. Any comments, questions, corrections? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. First up, discussion items. Request for the reassignment of $700,000 in undesignated cash reserves to pay-as-you-go project capital projects. Who's got it? Kristen or Jim?
I will. As you may recall, last year we adopted a policy that allowed for the reassignment of undesignated cash reserves. In 2023, we did the first reassignment of that. We're here to report that there is yet again funds available for reassignment, and we are requesting permission to reallocate $700,000 of that to the capital projects. It does still leave us beyond the minimum reserve policy. So at this point, especially short of the audit being completed to turn projected numbers into actual numbers, we're requesting reallocation of that $700,000.
Alderman Strelchak.
I was honestly scratching my hand. I
Oh,
apologize.
okay. It looked a little bit like a hand raise. Alderman Bach, I see a finger.
Yeah, okay. Not a question on the budget, but maybe for Jim on my continuing ongoing learning about the water utility. Could you, and this isn't that water system storage, can you just briefly tell me, can just talk a little bit about what that is? There was like 4 tanks or something, and I always see those tanks around and wondered what is that and how does the capital money work for that? How do those operate?
Sure. So this is the capital budget where we kind of allocate and store money for eventual capital we have to spend on the storage, which we have 3 reservoirs and 1 water tower. The water tower is in Mequon Business Park 1 to the west of the combined facility, kind of north of the Rockwell building. So it's a 500,000 gallon tower, but currently, since we took over Mequon Business Park 1 in 2013, the tower has been empty. The reason why the tower is empty is because when we converted the business park over to treated Lake Michigan water, the hydraulic gradient, or where the water level would sit in the water tower, would be right at overflow, and it would never vary because the water comes in from Milwaukee and it stays at a specific pressure. So in order to utilize the tower, what we would need to do is modify the tower with altitude valves, and at this point in time it would need to be painted, assessed, and painted. So part of the money that we are setting aside in this capital budget is for that, assessment, and then, reconfiguring if we decide to do that. The others, there are 3 reservoirs, 2 are active, 1 is inactive, that eventually, once we make we just put the second meter pit in for the Milwaukee Waterworks out on Swan with the Swan Ridge development. And whenever we get that connection back to the main utility, which is about a mile of water main that we're going to need to connect the dots on, once we have 2 supply points from Milwaukee Waterworks, we will no longer need these reservoirs. So this capital will be set aside for abandoning these reservoirs.
And is that water stored for emergency when you see those big tanks? I mean, do they test that? Is it just used for emergencies, or what?
Twofold. One, the towers that are, at ground storage, the reservoirs, those are kind of emergency that, that we turn them over daily to keep the water fresh in the reservoir. So we pump out of it, let it, get used out in the system, and then refill those reservoirs periodically. The tower is there as static supply, so that if we lose our water supplier for some reason, you have elevated water, which creates pressure, and it buys you time to resolve whatever issue you have until you get to a point where you can resolve the problem and refill the tower. We fortunately have 2 sources of supply. We have Milwaukee Waterworks and then the North Shore Water Commission, which is what we feed Bayside and River Hills. And we have a booster pump in between Bayside and Mequon. So if we lose Milwaukee, which has happened about 2 or 3 times, the booster station will turn on and provide that water supply up into Mequon. And that's happened like 3 times since I've been here.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Good questions. Any other feedback from the commissioners? Nice to hear our utilities still doing well and able to generate some funds for capital projects. We weren't always so lucky, not that long ago. So, healthy position for us to be in.
I would move for the Water Utility Commission to adopt the reassignment of undesignated cash reserves in
Second.
the amount of 700.
Motion and a second. Any other feedback from the commission? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Strelchak,
Aye.
Commissioner Tlaco,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
hand chair is excused, Commissioner Bach,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish,
Aye.
Commissioner Bratt,
Aye.
Commissioner Gebhardt,
Aye.
and Commissioner Nervin.
Aye. That item carries. Next, we have adoption of the fiscal year 2025 Mequon Water Utility Budget.
As a reminder, unlike the sewer utility, the water utility budget does not include rate setting, so there is no proposal for the rate to change because we're not under a rate case. So for the most part, we're asking for permission to allocate the revenues, projected revenues of the budget as outlined in the document.
So status quo from last year. Any questions from any of the commissioners, or is there a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Strelchak,
Aye.
Commissioner Tlaco,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner hand chair is excused, Commissioner Bach,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish,
Aye.
Commissioner Bratt,
Aye.
Commissioner Gebhardt,
Aye.
Commissioner Nervin.
Aye. And we have a budget. That's good. Next, we have authorization for the Mequon Water Utility to exceed $25,000 for the purchases and/or services from Core and Main, Aetna Supply, Renault, DF Tomasini, Mid-City, MJ Construction, Rosga, Badger Meter, and United Systems and Software Incorporated to complete projects as needed during fiscal year 2025.
Unfortunately, unlike some other budgets that we pass, the water utility budget is just such that we can't build them under individual accounts. The PSC account just doesn't allow us to do that. So these are routine vendors that we use for the purposes as listed. So we're requesting the authorization to exceed $25,000, but to be clear, it's as you just approved through the budget.
So as planned, we anticipate that the sum total of these 7 or 8 vendors will aggregate to more than 25,000 at some point during the year, next year.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Strelchak,
Aye.
Commissioner Tlaco,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner hand chair is excused, Commissioner Bach,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish,
Aye.
Commissioner Bratt,
Aye.
Commissioner Gebhardt,
Aye.
and Commissioner Nervin.
Aye. Next up, consideration of an amendment to the Mequon Municipal Water Utilities Water Connection Policy related to the amortization of system depreciation for private water trusts. This back from a couple months ago where we discussed the possibility. It's finally here before us.
Yes, and you authorized staff to generate some policy language. Just as a little bit of an update, we had contemplated mirroring the special assessment language to allow for amortization, but after further review of the tariff, we actually already have much of the language required to allow for the amortization. So with just a few slight changes to the connection policy language, we're able to allow for the amortization of the costs as the tariff already allows. So we're here before you seeking permission to amend the document as such and then share with private water trusts.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Bach.
Would we be able to get a list in our districts of the water trusts that are around? I mean, just in case that question comes
Sure.
up. I mean, that would be, for me at least, that would be helpful, just so I know how many we
We have the
and-
list, the slate thing we probably have to figure out is doing it by district, but yes, we
Yeah,
can do that.
We can send out an email to each one of the board members as to, you know, who is a water trust in your system.
Or maybe we can just add a district column to the
Oh.
list, and that way everybody can have it.
We may be helpful to you, you know, if that
Yep.
happens. So, great, thank you.
Oh, that was close. Commissioner Gebhardt was a nanosecond quicker.
Well, with being in a district that's got a couple of water trusts, I think this is something that will really help trying to go ahead and bring more customers on and give them some options. So I'd like to use that as a motion to approve.
Second.
Ooh, motion and a second. All right. Commissioner Brett.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. I've already nagged your team about the number of trusts in my district, so the 3 that are still in existence, I think will definitely move them toward considering this. So this is great news, so thanks for following this through.
Any other discussion or questions for staff? We have a motion and a second. I didn't even have to ask for it. That's good. Hearing and seeing no other comments. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. We'll see how impactful it is in getting water trusts to progressively change over. Hopefully, amortization of the costs will make it a little easier. Good luck. Next up, we have a status update for the Mequon Water Utility Master Plan.
This first update is really more of a non-update. We just had otherwise indicated when we adopted the master plan a year ago that we would provide you with an annual update, but after further review, it really makes sense to do the annual update after the fiscal year actually closes. So we just want to let you know that we will still provide you with an annual update. It just won't come until likely beginning of second quarter next year.
Can everyone wait? It's okay. Two more months. Perfect. Sounds good. Everyone okay with that? If we are, we can move on to the next item, status update of the Mequon Water Utility Leak Audit.
I'll certainly let Jim answer any specific questions that you have on this item, but again, a year ago, you authorized a utility leak audit, and we wanted to report back to you what the findings were and what the work to date was, and any work further to come to address that non-revenue water that we otherwise have in the system.
So a quick summary
Go ahead,
was Astera, which is a firm that uses satellite technology. They were doing work with several other utilities in the area, and we combined with Milwaukee and Glendale and Cudahy and several other utilities. And they do a quick look down from a satellite and identified 46 areas that normally consisted of like about 10 or 12 homes, you know, like water main that fed those 10 to 12 homes that they highlighted as we think we see a leak in this area based off the conductivity of the water that they can see from the satellite. So they narrowed it down to these 46 points, and then there was a field team that came out and listened in the field. I think they did all of like 36 of the points. There's still 10 points of interest that they didn't get to in the time that they had allotted to do the field study. But in those 36 areas that they listened, they found 6 leaks, active leaks. 3 were easy to resolve. They were fire hydrants, so we were able to work the hydrant in the field and get it to stop leaking. 3 were more complicated, where it was buried infrastructure that required hiring a contractor, digging up the particular offending piece of infrastructure and repairing it. Auxiliary valve for a hydrant was one of them, and 2 service laterals, one of which happened to be Dan Gannon, one of the former water commissioners. So that was an interesting way of re-interacting with Dan.
Trust me, I heard about it.
I'm sure. I did too. But those have all been resolved now. You can see on the table that eliminated water loss within the system, and we evaluated that and put a dollar amount to it. The one thing we did want to indicate is the staff at City Water, looking at the numbers that they put down for what they assumed was leaking, I think they're very conservative in the numbers that they were using. And by conservative, I mean they underestimate what they think the leak is. I think the leaks were of a higher rate, like maybe, 1.5 to 2 times what they are estimating. So I think our reduction is more than what they were estimating, is how I would phrase that.
And I vaguely recall there was a percentage of non-revenue water that was maybe twice as high as we would like it to be. There's
Yes.
always going to be some.
Yep.
How much closer does that push us to getting to the ideal value?
I'll let Eric. Eric
Okay.
is an engineer with City Water, so he does a lot of this analysis. I'll let Eric speak to that.
Yeah, so unfortunately with the timing of the scans, they happened late last year after the contract approval into early this year, and then the repairs happened this summer. So we haven't really had, you know, a long duration to assess the impact of that. Looking at our third quarter billing, which is probably the first quarter with the majority of these 6 leaks being resolved, we're still higher than we would like. Without having final numbers, third quarter, if you remember, late last year and early this year, we were probably around that 20% non-revenue water as a system average. Third quarter, with the numbers back from billing and just our monthly billing from our wholesale suppliers, we're at about 13 to 14%. So we've seen a reduction. I still don't think we're quite where we want to be, but I think we can still consider the satellite leak detection a success. We found probably 6 leaks that we wouldn't have found, you know, without it. But I still think there's probably some you know, leaks out in the system that we still have not yet found. So
Certainly, we haven't had opportunity to field check 10 of the 46 sites, so there's probably a couple out there, 2 or 3 amongst those 10 that are going to only improve that, but that's a pretty nice improvement.
Yep. All utilities, I mean, from the inception of the Mequon water utility, when We Energy zoned it, you know, originally back in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was always lost water. I mean, it's almost impossible to get to 0. You just like to get to single digits if you can. We're making headway towards that. We still have work that we can do, so that's something that we can bring to you, you know, in the future, you know, to try and keep, you know, ratcheting these numbers down.
Sure.
And these leaks were leaks that were not surfacing, so it was, you know, not easy to find. It took, you know, doing something different to try and locate this.
Sure. Yeah, it's just not gushing out of the ground.
Right. Those are easy.
Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. I don't see any, like, dates of age of this equipment at all on any of the cards that are here. Do we kind of keep track of, you know, the age of these hydrants or the areas that were broke? And then the reason why I asked that is that, was there a certain time frame when they were installed? Was there a certain vendor that did those? Was there, and so do we keep track of that? So historically, if we see that it is a break that this particular vendor installed, that we have caution with the next time that happens with, I mean, the next time we consider that vendor or that for it. And also taking a look at the age on these so that we can kind of project out that these may possibly fail, or that certain type of equipment that we're using there, the hydrant or something like that, that may fail. Are we keeping records of that?
Yeah, excellent question. So we have a GIS system, which is a computer-based map of the water utility, which allows us to operate the utility, you know, whenever there's emergencies and things of that nature. We can pull it up on, you know, an iPad or our phone to see where are the valves, where is everything located. And part of that GIS system, it keeps all of those details that you've just requested. So we know the age of the water main, the diameter, the material of construction, you know, is it PVC or is it cast iron? What the lateral, you know, where the laterals are located, what that lateral is made of, is it copper, is it plastic, all that information. And hydrants, the manufacturer of the hydrant, the date it was installed, all of that is all included in that GIS. It's just a matter of drilling into the map, you know, selecting things and go into the details and what, you know, what year was this made and what manufacturer is that hydrant. So all that is available, and then we even have the ability when we have leaks, like an emergency, like a water main break or a lateral leak and things of that nature, that we can add those to the GIS to identify that we had a leak here. And so we can keep track of, are there more of them on this side of the system versus that side of the system? It allows us to visually identify that. So that's all good. Now, the one thing it doesn't do, which we would have to probably dig into our records, is who is the contractor who did the work. I don't think that's identified in the GIS system at this point in time. It's just basically what is the infrastructure, not who put it in.
So do we periodically look at that type of information and see if there's any correlation between all of them?
We actually have changed our standard specifications because of hydrants in the past. So yes, we have had that and then make adjustments accordingly.
Perfect. Commissioner Bach.
This was money well spent. It's good to find out those leaks. So if the water is not bubbling to the surface, and you've got 1 million+ gallons in a year, where is that going? And you know, what is it? Just groundwater then, or what's the I mean, you'd think that'd be a mess.
Yeah, you love that question. And it took me having to deal with customer calls on how did I use this much water, and I can't believe that this much water passed through my meter. There's no way this much water happened in my house, to understand the effect of time. Okay? 1 million gallons seems like a lot of water until you start breaking it down to how many gallons per minute it is. I'll give you a perfect example for a customer, a leak. People will have like a little leak in their toilet, and they think, well, that can't add up to anything. It's just this tiny little 1/10 of a gallon per minute, right? That's flowing down the back of my toilet. Well, there's 1,440 minutes in a day, so that adds up to 144 gallons. There's 90 days in a cycle. That's 13,000 gallons out of this tiny little dribble in the back of somebody's toilet that went down their toilet. And it just adds up so quickly, and time is your enemy. So 1 million gallons seems like this huge astronomical number. It breaks down to like 10 or 15 gallons per minute over time, right? And that goes down the French drain of all of these water mains and laterals are all bedded in stone, right? And it's done that way on purpose to protect the pipe, but it also acts as a French drain. So if you don't have a very big leak, it just runs in the stone and we never see it. It takes a larger leak to come up to the surface for us to know, oh boy, we got a real problem here, we need to fix this.
Commissioner Parrish.
Yeah, thanks again for coming back with this fascinating topic. How frequent should we do this? This was actually a fun exercise, and do we do this every year till we get to like below the 10%, and then we have to be worried about new issues? So does this make sense to do just as part of our water program? And then finally, it doesn't sound like you've concluded there's any theft in the system, which was one of the other things we were looking for. Is that a concern of yours based on the new data?
I don't think there's a lot of theft. I think every utility has it. I think, unfortunately contractors will pull up to a hydrant somewhere and, quickly hook up and get their water and head out. But so I think we have some, but not a lot. I think the majority of this is, like infrastructure leaks. How soon? Excellent question. I would say the 10 remaining locations that we know that we never got to because of time, we could probably, go back to those relatively easily because we know where they are and we can, hire a contractor to go do that. So we could probably bring that back to the commission, soon. The Estera we were working with other municipalities when Estera was doing a satellite pass over the area. We would probably have to find out from the other communities that we worked with, when is the next time that we're thinking that everybody wants to, give this a try again. I think that would probably be the better, find out, because it was economy of scale, right? We worked with several other utilities. It reduced the cost for every utility. It was a good way of doing it. So we probably talked to, Frank from Cudahy and Pat from Milwaukee and say, when do you guys think we should do this again?
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
And just to further note, there is a little bit of economy of scale. I mean, as noted, while Jim said he thinks that the estimates were conservative, in the end it was $4,700 worth of water versus a $25,000+ study. So at some point your frequency has to match the cost of the project itself.
Just doing some rough math. Once we go investigate the other 10, we'll get pretty close to taking it from 20 to 10%, because we're about 3/4 of the way done, and we're reduced it by 7% down to 13. So we'll get close. Maybe find more leaks in the last 10 than the other ones, but
That is also part of the point of, that is one of the tables that will be updated as a part of that annual master plan update. So at least once a year, we'll be looking at what that number is and then can determine if there's further action required or if other actions are already planned.
by monitoring, you'll be able to tell real quickly when it's time to do it again, for sure. Commissioner Brett.
Got a question. We also provide a water to Bayside, River Hills. Are those areas getting evaluated too? Wouldn't suspect anyone of stealing water in those
Yeah.
communities, but I'm sure they have leaks as well.
Yep, no, excellent question. So, when they did this study, they being Asterra, did this study, they asked for our utility map of everything that we serve. So we look at it as not Mequon and then the other communities, it's Mequon, Bayside, Thiensville, and River Hills. So we gave them our entire map saying, here is our utility, and they looked at everything, and we found areas to listen in every community. There was a little bit of everything. It was not like one hotbedded area, it was kind of like a perimeter. There really wasn't much in the middle, it was pretty much along the perimeter all the way on the outside.
Thank you.
Yep.
Where the water's the most stagnant. Go figure. Commissioner Bach.
One last comment. Even though that doesn't seem like a lot of money, there's also being a good steward of natural resources as well, to stop some of that leak, because there's other people in this country where, they're just looking for water. And so that, at least in my head, that's part of the equation as well.
Sounds good. Any other questions on the water leak study? Yeah, just an update, no action. I'm sure we'll hear about it at least annually when we do updates to plans, and keep monitoring it. Good work. Happy to see the number going down. That brings us to the end of the Mequon Water Utility Commission meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned, and now